Get ready with me as I tell you about the patient who changed my nursing career. So as many of you know, I was an ICU nurse for about 8 or 9 years. And probably 2 or 3 years into that ICU career, I was like, what have I done? I started seeing that in the ICU, not everybody, but a lot of people, we were keeping alive, knowing as healthcare providers that they likely were not going to make it out of the ICU. There was a particular patient, I got really close to her and her family. She had gotten out of the ICU after a major surgery due to metastatic cancer, but then kept coming back to the ICU. She had bilateral PEs. She was lucky she even survived. She ended up being on multiple machines, multiple medications, keeping her alive in the ICU, and I was her nurse most shifts for months. I started hearing in rounds how we were avoiding the topic of talking about the big picture for this woman. And although, of course, I loved her too, I wanted her to survive too, I felt like day in and day out like we were doing a disservice to her and to her family by not at least addressing the fact that she was likely not going to make it out of the ICU. So finally one day during rounds, I got the courage to speak up and say, can we have a family meeting to talk about the big picture? And I was afraid. After I said it, I can remember my heart was like pounding. And I was so surprised by once I said that, it was like the elephant was out of the room. Everyone in rounds was like, yes, let's set that up. Let's set that up. And they set it up in like a couple days. It was like everyone was waiting for someone to say that. So we set up the family meeting and we discussed with the family what we were seeing, the trends we were seeing with their loved one, which was she wasn't going to get better. And with them knowing that, what would they like us to do? The family decided after hearing what they were hearing that they didn't want their loved one to live like they were living, and they decided to turn off the machines that day. And although that patient died, that was one of the first times I really felt like I made a difference in a patient, in a family's life. And I knew I wanted to do something different. I knew if people were going to die, they should be dying differently. It shouldn't have to look like that for everybody. And that's how I first got my passion to be honest and talk to people about death and dying, and eventually became a hospice nurse. I'm forever grateful for that patient.